Thought form is a structure perceived through human consciousness, related to the volume of information called thought. That is, in fact, the thought form is a specific geometric form that contains the thought of a person. If you take the space of thought, you can imagine it yourself or directly enter it, then, for example, a table there represents one configuration of information, a chair, another, a person, a third. That is, the thought form is precisely the form that, in connection with the thought contained in it, corresponds to some kind of information object. Summarizing, we can say quite simply, a thought form is a form of thought containing some specific information. As I said, the thought form is perceived through the human mind. When in life you come across some kind of object, you can consider it from different angles. If this is, for example, an airplane, then you can look, say, at the cockpit, or at the wings, or at the tail. So with thought form, since this is really a real object, a real form, when perceived, its consciousness can touch it from different sides. And just as you can see its various elements with an airplane, so in this case, when consciousness comes into contact with different sides of the thought form, different thoughts are perceived. Consider a specific example. Let's say, a person go to the store to buy himself a bottle of mineral water. The corresponding thought form contains the idea of a person to buy mineral water, but not only that, it also contains an understanding of where he will go, in what way, and for this, you may need to get dressed if it's winter outside. All this and much more is contained in one given thought form. Using the scientific language, we can say that in one thought form contains many semantic parameters. Scanning the thought form to identify these parameters, that is, processing the information contained in the thought form, can occur at different speeds depending on the level of human development, and the difference here can be very significant. A person with an ordinary state of consciousness, as a rule, generally perceives only a part of the thought form. If the level of a person's spiritual development is high enough, then the perception of the thought form occurs simultaneously from all sides, that is, completely, and moreover, instantly. Consideration of the concept of thought form is also important from another practical point of view. It's about managing technical systems. Let us examine this question. There is such a fact. Thought forms in geometric parameters are necessarily joined with one of the manifestations of the soul. That is life. This is the real situation. Thought is hierarchically connected with the soul either directly, which, however, is rare, or indirectly through the structure of accumulated experience. Therefore, the thought form has control directly from the soul. And since the soul reacts to the reality of the fundamental plan, it turns out that the metabolic process of the thought form with the outside world is slowed down or it is absent for some period. So, the thought form is controlled directly from the soul, and therefore the impulse from the outside world cannot get it, cannot change it, and therefore, control with the help of thought is the most protected control system. It would seem, at first glance, that technical means should be the most stable in the management of technology, that they would seem to be more stable than thought. However, in reality this is not so. In fact, thought is the most stable system, and therefore the management of technology through thought or thought form is the most reliable form of control. This can be understood by a specific example. Let's say, a plane fly on autopilot. The contact of equipment, in this case autopilot, with the external environment exists constantly. And this represents a significant potential danger. For example, a projectile can hit the autopilot, or it can be disabled in some other way. If a control system is made into a thought, then it may actually have no contact with the external environment at all. And although, of course, in principle, there are contacts between all the elements, But in this case we are talking about the contact time, that the contact made by the thought can be instantaneous, while the autopilot's contact both with the plane and with outer space is permanent. And if the contact of a controlling thought with an airplane is instantaneous, then the external environment already cannot change this thought. And because the plane can safely fly along the planned route, and he will fly it, no matter what happens. I want to emphasize here that in the idea you can also lay the security element of any object. The possibility of this is based on the protection of thought from the external environment. On a device for transmitting information and controlling with the help of thought. I received a patent for an invention. We return to the question of using thought forms for resurrection. Having created the necessary thought form, you can restore the body in any place, even where, for example, there is no habitable environment, where, say, there is no air, but there is only a vacuum. However, if the thought form is created correctly, then in this environment, instead of vacuum, oxygen will appear and everything else that is needed, and everything will be in order. Once they asked me to restore a long-dead houseplant. I created the necessary thought form and the plant revived and turned green, although there was no water there and the earth has since dried up a long time ago. The correct thought form changes the environment in the right way. Distant sections of consciousness. Imagine that you are considering a question, trying to understand it. The degree of understanding of it may be different. There may be a clear understanding, or not very clear, or completely obscure. And since understanding is in the space of consciousness, the degree of understanding can be brought into correspondence with the usual distance in physical space. We can say that what you well understand is in the immediate areas of consciousness, and what is not very in the remote. So, the areas of your consciousness related to issues that you did not understand, or that you did not delve into, believing that you will deal with them in the future, or to which you simply do not attach importance, are called distant areas of consciousness in this method. So it turns out that resurrection can occur due to the work of such distant sections of consciousness. This process is very capacious. It can be used when you do not cover all the processes taking place at the same time.